السلام على من جعل الله الشفاء في تربته. السلام على من الإجابة تحت قبته. السلام على ساكن كربلاء. فيا ليتنا ثم يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي. يا سادتي فنفوز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، قال مولانا إمام علي بن الحسين السجاد زين العابدين صلوات الله وسلامه عليه، اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعجل فرجه، لعمته عقيلة بني هاشم سيدة زينب الكبرى: أنت بحمد لله عالمة غير معلمة، وفهمة غير مفهمة. صدق الإمام وآمنا به. زينوا مجالسكم بذكر محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أحبائي, kalam today revolves around عقيلة بني هاشم صديقة الصغرى سيدة زينب الكبرى. Seeking the ma'rifah of Sayyida Zainab is something that is absolutely important in our own journey of attaining Kamal and in our own journey of speaking spirituality. Studying the life and having ma'rifah of the azamah of Sayyida Zainab is absolutely crucial. Majlis tonight, in terms of understanding the grand status and the divine status of Sayyida Zainab, you find the kalam of Imam Zainul Abidin Ruhi Lahul Fida in Kufa. The women and the children have just been taken as prisoners from the 11th of Muharram from Karbala to Kufa. And as they enter into the city of Kufa, there are 4 sermons, 4 khutbahs that are delivered in Kufa before they entered, the Sabaya entered into the palace of Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad al-La'in. In the market or in the streets, you had the khutbah of Imam Sajjad, you had the khutbah of Sayyida Kulthum, you have the khutbah of Sayyida Fatima bint al-Husayn, يعني Sayyida Sukaina. And number 4, you have the khutbah of Sayyida Zainab. And you find that as Sayyida Zainab Ruhi Lahal Fida was delivering her khutbah in Kufa, Imam Sajjad turns towards Sayyida Zainab and he says to her, Anti alhamdulillah or bihamdulillah alima غير mu'allama wa fahima غير mufahama. Praise be to Allah, Imam Sajjad says, O my auntie, you, yani Sayyida Zainab, you are that alima. An alima, a person of the highest grade of knowledge. Alima is feminine for alim. You are an alima, but without any teacher. غير معلمة. وفهم Yani Fahima is a person who not only possesses knowledge, but possesses and understands the parameters that are required to execute this knowledge and apply this knowledge in the perfect manner that is intended. This is Fahima, غير مفهمة, without having anyone taught you how to become this Fahima, apply this ilm within its parameters. It is important for us to understand the depth of the words of Imam as-Sajjad when he said this statement in honor of his aunt Sayyida Zainab. What does it mean? Anti alima غير mu'allama wa fahima غير mufahama. When the Ma'soom Imam speaks, the Ma'soom Imam doesn't speak with mubalagha, doesn't have exaggerations in his words. The Imam, when he addresses and speaks, every statement, every word that emanates from the blessed Ma'soom Imam has depth that requires contemplation. And you find that Maulana Imam Ja'far ibn Muhammad as-Sadiq, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, ruhi lahul fida, in a hadith says, Riwayatan tadrih khayrum min alfin tarwih. One hadith, yani of Ahlul Bayt, a single hadith that you understand it properly, this one hadith is better than 1,000 other hadith that you would just narrate with your tongue. So what the Imam says over here is that the comprehension of the hadith is by far much more important than just narrating the hadith and repeating the hadith without having understood it. And in the light of this, we want to deep dive in to the statement that is made by Imam as-Sajjad. Anti alima ghayr mu'allama wa fahima ghayr mufahama. What does it mean when Imam Sajjad says to Sayyida Zainab that you are a teacher that was untaught, who received ilm but without a teacher? If Sayyida Zainab is an alima, and Imam as-Sajjad is saying, Inti ya Zainab, you are an alima even though you didn't have a teacher. Where does this ilm of Sayyida Zainab come from? Because Imam Sajjad is saying you didn't have any other teacher from the human beings, from the creation of Allah. You didn't have a teacher that was a non-ma'soom. You didn't even have a teacher who is a ma'soom. Pay attention to these words of Imam as-Sajjad. It was not that you were taught by the malaika. He says you are an alimah without a teacher, meaning that the ilm and the knowledge of Sayyida Zainab Ruhi Lahal Fida is an ilm that she received from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly. When there is a certain aspect of the ilm of Sayyida Zainab Ruhi Lahal Fida, even though Sayyida Zainab lived in the presence of a number of the ma'sumeen, she lived under the shade of Rasulullah, she lived under the shade of her mother Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen, she lived under the shade of her father Amir al-Mu'mineen, she lived under the shade of her brother Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba, she lived under the shade of her brother Imam al-Hussein, she lived under the shade of her nephew Imam Sajjad, and she lived under the shade of her nephew's son Imam al-Baqir. Sayyida Zainab lived in the proximity of 7 ma'sumeen. And yet, indeed, without a doubt, that she got ilm and she obtained ilm from these 7 ma'sumeen. However, Imam Sajjad alayhi salam says there is a particular aspect of ilm, anti-Sayyida Zainab, that this ilm, you didn't even get it from the seven ma'soom, you got it from Allah Azza wa Jal. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajjal faraja. What does it mean, and what are the implications of this ilm of Sayyida Zainab that she has received from Allah? شوفوا أحبائي, ilm is of two types. Ulama will come forward and they will tell you that there is ilm that is kasabi and the ilm that is wahbi or wahabi. Some other scholars call it ilmul ladunni. The first category, ilmul kasabi, is that ilm which is conventional knowledge. Knowledge that is conventionally sought, traditionally sought, like the type of ilm that you and I seek. If you and I want to gain knowledge in a particular field, in the field of tafsir or in the field of Quran, for example, you and I, we have to go and we have to study and attain that ilm from a teacher. And in the path of seeking ilm, we have to struggle and we have to put forward sacrifices in order to seek this ilm. This is ilm kasabi, ilm that we are born without this knowledge, but we have to make an active, or we have to take an active initiative to seek this ilm. Number one. Number two, and when we do seek this ilm is not a perfect ilm. It is not a divine ilm. The understanding of our ilm is either ijtihadi or dhanni. The way they say in usulul fiqh, principles of jurisprudence, the ilm that we have. So today, for example, when you open a certain hadith of any one of the imams, or you read a certain verse of the Holy Quran, your understanding of the verse of the Quran, your understanding of that hadith, this ilm that you have got in that you understand the hadith or understand the Quran, this ilm is ilm ijtihadi. You could be correct in your understanding and you could also be wrong in your understanding, because at the end of the day we are not ma'soom. The ilm that we seek and the ilm that we attain is a result and a consequence of our intellectual efforts to seek the truth, but our intellect is also restricted within its capacity, whereas the intellect is not immune from making mistakes. The intellect is not immune from deducing the wrong conclusions from a number of set premises. The mind is prone to error. Hence, you will find that even our ulama, even the Maraj al-Taqlid, when you open the Risala Amaliyya, Tawdi'ul Masail of the Maraja, you will see in a number of the Masail in which there is, for example, the text is not as clear, or there could be different interpretations of what is dhahir, what is apparent, especially in hadith in which there is no nas, the text where there is mafhum involved, interpretation involved. You will find that the Marja Taqlid says Wallahu Alam, and Allah knows best. Sometimes when you open the Tawdi'ul Masail or the Risala Amaliyya, you will see that the Marja doesn't give you a fatwa. He will tell you based on precaution, ihtiyat, meaning what? That he has not come to a definitive 100% conclusion from the text that is available that X should be done 100% or should be refrained from. And hence there is caution, ihtiyat. فَإِحْنَا, this is a normal thing, is the procedure and the process of life. That the human being is restricted in their intellect. So our ilm, the ilm of the fallible person, is an ilm that is subject to error, is an ilm that is bound by restrictions. There are times that we are right in our interpretations, and there are times that we may not be right in our interpretations. This is an acceptance of the limitation of the human mind. This is ilm kasabi. On the other hand, you have a second type of ilm that is known as ilm ladunni or ilm wahbi. This is that ilm that emanates from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly. And the difference between ilm ladunni and this ilm ijtihadi is that the ilm that emanates from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is an ilm that is pure, an ilm that is infallible, that is free of any sort of form of error. Therefore, the ilm that is possessed by Sayyida Zainab, Ruhi Lahal Fida, is an ilm that is different from the type of the ilm that is possessed by the rest of the fallible creation. The grade of the ilm of Sayyida Zainab is much higher than the grade of all other fallible human beings. Hence, you will find that within the principles of jurisprudence, as we will see in the coming part of the lecture, that Sayyida Zainab is a hujjah. And the reason that she is a hujjah is that through this ilm ladunni, Sayyida Zainab al-Kubra possesses ilm and knowledge of ahkam that is hukmul waqi'i, as opposed to what we in the Hawza Ilmiya and even the Maraj al-Taqlid, their interpretation and their conclusion and their understanding of Islamic text is to get to a hukm al-Zahiri. Hukm al-Zahiri is the apparent understanding, which may be or may not be correct. Whereas with Sayyida Zainab, it is hukm al-Waqi'i. The ilm and the hukum that is in the Lawh al-Mahfuz is with Sayyida Zainab. And over here there is a difference in the ilm of Sayyida Zainab and the ilm of the entire human being, including the highest fallible alim within the fold of religion. Sayyida Zainab is far more greater than that, uncomparable aslan. For if we understand this, you will also see within the seerah, it is narrated by Sheikh Ja'far al-Naqdi. Keep in mind that the ilm of Sayyida Zainab is ilm that emanates from Allah. Then we have from the seerah and the history of Sayyida Zainab, Ruhi Lahal Fida, that whilst she was in Kufa, during the apparent khilafah that was given to her father Amirul Mu'mineen, Imam was always an Imam from the time of the Shahada of Rasulullah. Whether the people accepted his Imamat or didn't accept the Imam, Imam was always Imam. This Zahiri Khilafah was given to him towards the last times or the last period of his life. For the Hadith al-Sharif or the historian Sheikh al-Naqdi in his kitab in regards to the seerah of Sayyida Zainab mentions that during the apparent khilafah of Amirul Mu'mineen, when he moved the capital into the city of Kufa, the role of Sayyida Zainab within the government of Amirul Mu'mineen was that she was responsible for teaching the women of Kufa tafsir of the Quran. Shay'un ajib wa gharib. Shabab, Amirul Mu'mineen is the Ma'soom Imam. Amirul Mu'mineen is that Imam who Rasulullah said, وَكُلَّ شَيْءٍ أَحْسَيْنَاهُ فِي إِمَامٍ مُبِينٍ. Rasulullah said that Amirul Mu'mineen al-Haqq ma'a Ali wal-Aliyun ma'al-Haqq. Rasulullah said Aliyun ma'al Quran wal-Quran ma'a Ali. Despite Amirul Mu'mineen being the embodiment and the manifestation of the Quran in its entirety, Sayyida Zainab was given the responsibility of tafsir of the Quran. Ya Ali. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajjal faraja. In the presence of Amirul Mu'mineen, who is the Quran Natik. Haytum shufu, look through history. Ibn Abbas, who is also revered by the Mukhalifin and the Amma, he is given the title Hibr al-Ummah, the scholar of the Ummah. Majority of the tafsir that is accepted or taken by the Mukhalifin is taken through Ibn Abbas. And even when it comes to hadith, he is somebody that they depend on when it comes to tafsir of the Quran and tafsir of ahadith. A person like Ibn Abbas, who was the Hibrul Ummah, would not speak in the presence of Amirul Mu'mineen. Even though Ibn Abbas took, according to them, what they say, a bit of ilm from Rasulullah. But even in the presence of Amirul Mu'mineen, they would not speak. See, we have a qaida in the world of academic, in the world of the hawza, in the world of ilm, in the world of deen. When a marja taqleed speaks, the students inside of the room are silent. Ihtiraman for the ilm of the marja taqleed. This is something that is within our akhlaq as we seek knowledge. So the goal and the understanding has always been, and this is something that is part and parcel of Islamic culture. You will find that why during the time of Amirul Mu'mineen, the hadith that emanate from Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba are very few. You will not find in the presence of Amirul Mu'mineen, who is Quran Natik and the Hujjah of the time, that Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba would go out and deliver sermons. You will not find. That's why Bain al-Qawsain, people used to come to Amirul Mu'mineen and they used to say Imam Hassan is not as knowledgeable, Imam Hassan is not as eloquent. For then Amirul Mu'mineen to show them and give them a glimpse that Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba is the Hujjah of Allah. He then told Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba on a number of occasions to go out and give sermons. One of the most eloquent sermons that were delivered when Imam Amirul Mu'mineen was rallying the masses to fight Aisha in the battle of Jamal. Who was in charge of raising and who was in charge of mobilizing the army of Amirul Mu'mineen? It was Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba. This was a government-oriented position. You have Amirul Mu'mineen, who is the head of state, and the national army needs to be mobilized in a war that poses to be the greatest fitna that the Muslim Ummah has seen. In this sensitive time, in this critical time, which is absolutely strategic as well. There's a mutiny. There's a mutiny in the government. The national army that needs to be mobilized is an army that is not only big in numbers, but is loyal to Amirul Mu'mineen, that will come to the battleground based on an aqidah that is correct. For this task that is so critical, Amirul Mu'mineen selects Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba. But you notice, Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba during the time of Amirul Mu'mineen was silent. Ihtiraman for the ilm of Amirul Mu'mineen, for the maqam of Amirul Mu'mineen. Similarly, during the time of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba, you will find that the hadith that emanate from Imam al-Hussein is very few. Ihtiraman for the maqam of the Hujjah fil ard at that time. Which is why even when Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba engaged in this ceasefire with Muawiyah, a lot of the people from the Munafiqeen, they came to Imam al-Hussein and they said to him, Ya Aba Abdullah, your brother has gone into a hudna. We will give bay'ah to you. Enter, take the flag from your brother and lead us to war against Muawiyah. Imam al-Hussein kept silent. He said, my kalam and my stance is the stance of my brother. For we have within our Islamic culture, within our academic culture, that ihtiraman for the maqam of the ilm of a person who is above you at a scholarly, at an ilmi level, there is silence that is observed. Yet you find, who would dare give tafsir in the presence of the one who is the Quranun Natik? The fact that Sayyida Zainab had classes of tafsir in the presence of the Imam Natiq, the one who is kull al-Quran and kull iman, shows you the maqam of Sayyida Zainab alayha salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And from here, in the presence of Amirul Mu'mineen, if Sayyida Zainab al-Kubra was delivering and teaching tafsir of the Quran, we understand. You understand that her ilm is from Allah, as per the hadith of Imam al-Sajjad, anti alima, ghayr mu'allama. So if you put these muqaddimat together, the first premise being that the ilm of Sayyida Zainab emanates from Allah. Number two, this ilm of Sayyida Zainab is an ilm that is infallible. Number three, that she was teaching the ilm of the Quran. If she had the ilm of the Quran from Allah Azza wa Jal, Sayyida Zainab, in regards to the Quran and the tafsir of the Quran, had full knowledge of that which is nasikh and mansukh, that which is muqayyad and which is mutlaq, that which is from the muhkamat and that which is from the mutashabihat, to a level of infallibility. The ilm of the Quran, the perfect ilm of the Quran, in order to be a mufassir of the Quran with perfect ilm from Allah, from here we understand that Sayyida Zainab possessed a level of infallibility. The fact that Sayyida Zainab was ma'suma, infallible. So if you put these muqaddimat together, her ilm is from Allah, and she had the ilm of the Quran, the tafsir of the Quran. And if she is giving tafsir in the presence of the Quran Natiq, we understand that her understanding and her ilm and her fahm of the Quran is shamil and kamil. Correct? Who has tafsir and knowledge of the Quran that is shamil and kamil? You come back to Surah Al-Waqi'ah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. إنه لقرآن كريم في كتاب مكنون لا يمسه إلا المطهرون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Waqi'ah says, indeed, this is the Quran Kareem, fi kitabim maknoon, meaning that the teachings of the Quran and the secrets that are within the Quran, that are encompassed in this greater book called Kitabul Maknoon, who has access to it? Only the mutahharun. Quick point on the side, between brackets, this verse of the Quran is also used by ulama to deduce the fact that you cannot touch the Quran, the letters of the Quran, without wudu, without being in a state of tahara. One of the proofs that is used by the maraja and the ulama is that they use this Quran, is this verse of the Quran from Surah Al-Waqi'ah. However, this understanding of the verse of the Quran is at the lowest level and the base level. It's a very superficial level through which a hukum shar'i is derived. There is a meaning far greater than this. See, the word is what the verse of the Quran says, what? لا يمسه إلا المطهرون. لا يمس. Yamus is taken from the word mas. You have mas and you have iltimas. If you say iltamas al-Quran, that means to physically touch the Quran. If you say mas al-Quran, it means to have access of the knowledge of the Quran. To not only interact with the Quran with your physical body, to interact with the Quran with your soul and your heart. Meaning that access to the secrets of the Quran from the Kitabul Maknoon is restricted only to the mutahharun. Mutahharun, yani those who are purified. And we are able to understand that if Sayyida Zainab was a mufassir of the Quran in the presence of Amirul Mu'mineen, who is Quranatic, and the ilm of the tafsir of the Quran that was granted to Sayyida Zainab is from Allah, I understand that Sayyida Zainab is from the mutahharun, meaning that she has a level of isma, infallibility. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajil faraja. Shabab, it is a big mistake. It is a catastrophical error for somebody to have the wrong understanding of isma or infallibility. Isma yani ma'soom. Ma'soom, number one, does not mean that a person doesn't commit sins. Sure. This is the lowest example of isma. It's not even the definition of isma. It is a misdaq of isma. It is a manifestation of infallibility. To not commit sin. This is not something that is extraordinary and restricted to the 14 Ahlul Bayt. Who said this is actually tawheen to the position of isma? We have people from Maraja, we have people from ulama. You go and you read their life history and you read their biographies. 20, 30 years they've not committed sins. Tahdhibun nafs, tazkiyatun nafs, that allows a person to live a life where he is compliant by that which is halal, that which is wajib, that which is mustahab, and to stay away from that which is haram. And as his levels and darajat go up, he stays away from that which is makruh. Is something that is humanly possible through tazkiyatun nafs and by following and implementing the teachings of Ahlul Bayt. It's not exclusive to Ahlul Bayt. If we say it is exclusive to Ahlul Bayt, it is tawheen, because it is a daraja that a normal human being can attain. Isma and infallibility, yani being ma'soom, means that in addition to you not committing a sin, leave committing a sin, thinking about a sin, which is the lowest level of isma in terms of misdaq. Isma yani your entire manner of thinking, your molding, your essence is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This infallibility, isma, we understand it from ayatul tathir. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. ويطهركم تطهيرا. This verse through which the isma of Ahlul Bayt is established or deduced. This is one verse. Another verse, there are multiple verses in the Quran that speak about the infallibility of the ma'sumin. Ayatul Tathir is one. This ayah in Surah Al-Waqi'ah is another one. If we understand that isma is greater than the ability to refrain from sin, it is a concept far greater than this. It is also important for us to understand that infallibility is not restricted to the 14 divine individuals that we traditionally know of. Yani Rasulullah, Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen, and the 12 Imams from Amir al-Mu'mineen to Imam al-Mahdi. 100% they are ma'soom. However, this is the core circle of isma, infallibility, and around these 14 personality, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created a group of people from the Bani Hashim who would be a support structure around these core 14 individuals. And in order to ensure that the message of the core 14 is successful, this support structure is also equipped with infallibility in the process. So we understand that Isma has two da'iras. The close or the immediate da'ira, which some of the ulama say is Ismatul Kubra, which is restricted to the 14 Ma'sumin, 14 from Rasulullah to Imam al-Mahdi. And then you have a greater parameter. And this isma includes infallibility, includes the likes of Sayyida Zainab al-Kubra, includes the likes of Imam Aliyun al-Akbar, includes the likes of Maulana Imam Qamar Bani Hashim Abul Fadl Abbas, includes the likes of Shah Qasim, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, and Shah Qasim. And you find that within the seerah and on the day of judgment, there is enough literature and evidence within the maktals, within the historical texts that talk about the infallibility of these imams, in the infallibility of these personalities. Sayyida Zainab Ruhi Lahal Fida, you refer back to the khutbah of Sayyida Zainab that she delivered in Kufa. There were two khutbahs, one in the souk, in the market, and one in the darbar or in the palace of Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad al-La'in. When Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad was sitting on the throne, and the Fatimiyat, yani the divine or the sacred women of Ahlul Bayt who were brought in as prisoners, when the Fatimiyat were standing, Sayyida Zainab's haiba stood out in the palace of Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad. Ibn Ziyad looks at her and he asked the people, who is this? They said, this is Zainab. When Sayyida Zainab alayhi salam started talking, what did she say? Alhamdulillah alladhi akramana bi nabiyyih wa ja'alana min ahli bayti wa tahharana tahthira. Sayyida Zainab in the palace of Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad is introducing herself as somebody who is from the household of Rasulullah, and this tahara and tathir, which is this tahara and this isma on the virtue of ayatul tathir, encompasses her as well. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajjal faraja. Ma'arif and Aqidah ahibba'i is something that we have to be well grounded in. Lest tomorrow somebody doesn't come and tell us that you are doing a ghulu in your Aqidah. Our understanding of Isma is naqis in this sense to a great extent. There is Ismatul Kubra, there is Ismatul Sugra. A direct 14, their level of Isma and infallibility by far is of a higher level than of the second parameter. This doesn't mean that they are not there. I'll give you another example, since we are on this topic. The tarbiyah of Bani Hashim. See, look at the words of Imam al-Sajjad. Everything comes back to this hadith of Imam al-Sadiq. Hadithun tadri afdal min alfin tarwih. One hadith that you fully understand properly is better than 1,000 hadith that you could repeat like a parrot. Understanding the hadith. Imam al-Sadiq rahimahul fida says, look at the hadith of Imam Sajjad. Imam al-Sajjad, when he comes back to Medina, he talks about the grief of losing the Bani Hashim. What does Imam al-Sajjad say? These 17 or 18 men from Bani Hashim that were shaheed on the day of Ashura. He says there were 17 stars, 17 men, the likes of whom there was no equivalent on this earth. Bani Hashim, who were martyred from the children of Muslim bin Aqil, from the children of Aqil, from the children of Amirul Mu'mineen, the brothers of Abul Fadl Abbas. These are people, Imam Sajjad says, there were no people equivalent to them in their sha'an, in their jalala, in their haiba, in their ilm, in their tahara. An example of this is Shah Qasim. I give you an example. What is the metal of these people from Ahlul Bayt? The isma, infallibility of Shah Qasim. Is ulama from Hawza, Ilmiya in the Najaf are able to extract isma from statements like these. Intum shufu. When Shah Qasim wanted to go into the battlefield, Imam al-Hussein has a conversation with Shah Qasim, Ruhi Lahul Fida. And he says to Shah Qasim, what do you think about death? He says to him, are you going to walk to your death, and are you going to go to your death tomorrow? What does Shah Qasim say? Death to me is sweeter than honey. Sahih? Death to me is sweeter than honey. Meaning what? There is a shawk towards death. Keep this statement of Shah Qasim on one side. You see the tarbiyah and the metal of the children of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba. You come back to the Quran. thousands and thousands of years before Karbala, Nabiullah Ibrahim was commanded to give a sacrifice and to sacrifice his son Ismail. Sahih? When Ibrahim has the divinely inspired dream from Allah that he needs to sacrifice Ismail and to slaughter Ismail, what did Ibrahim do? Nabiullah Ibrahim went to his son Ismail and he said to him, "Oh my son, I have been commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to sacrifice you. What is your opinion?" Refer back to the Quran. What did Ismail say? "Satajidani sabiran." Ya Allah, you will find me, Ya Ibrahim, Ya father, you will find me from amongst those who have sabr. You didn't understand. Shmata means, over here, there are two people who have been told death is in front of them. One who is a Nabi is telling his father, in the face of death, you will find me to have sabr. I will be patient, meaning that I may not be looking forward to it. I may not have shauq for it. It will be difficult, and difficult as it is, I will have sabr. But Qasim, he didn't say sabr. He says, to me it is sweeter than honey. Where is the reply of Qasim? Where is the reply? Darajat, darajat. These are not statements that are taken lightly. Shah Qasim is a faqih from the fuqaha of Ali Muhammad. You know, you go refer back to the books of fiqh. When you are in a state of jihad, to perform a jihad with your lace open is makruh. Shah Qasim, at that time when he was surrounded by the enemies in their thousands, Shah Qasim was doing jihad, but his mind, his ruh was that even in the state of the highest level of jihad, a single act of makruh will not emanate from him. For you find that, if we come back to our kalam and we come back to our topic, Isma and infallibility, ahibai, as a concept, you have this immediate da'ira of 14 individuals. Rasulullah, Siddiqat al-Tahira, and from Amir al-Mu'minin to Imam al-Mahdi. The core 14, Isma, Hujjajullah fil Ardh. And around them there is a greater parameter of Isma, which is known as Ismatul Sugra. And there's a difference, a very solid technical difference between Ismat al-Sugra and Kubra. Perhaps if we have an opportunity in the future, you could speak about that. But for now, it is important for you to know, understand, or to know that this level of individuals who are within this second parameter, just because they possess a level of infallibility, doesn't mean that they are independent of obedience to the Ma'soom Imam, or that they are equal to the Ma'soom Imam. La, the Ma'soom Imam has a sha'an that is greater even than the Anbiya, that is wadih. For you understand from here that Sayyida Zainab, with her ilm of the Quran and the statement of Imam as-Sajjad, the fact that she has received the ilm directly from Allah, the ilm of Allah cannot settle in a heart that is not pure, that is not tahir or mutahhir. Hada. If we understand that Sayyida Zainab was ma'sooma, infallible, and equipped with this knowledge from Allah, we come forward to the role of Sayyida Zainab when the Qafila returned back to Medina. What was the role of Sayyida Zainab, which eventually became a reason for her to be exiled into Sham? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. To understand the role of Sayyida Zainab, we have to take a little bit of a diversion. We take the diversion, and this diversion serves as a muqaddimah to understand the role of Sayyida Zainab. If you go back to the text, Ikmaluddin by Shaykh al-Saduq, Rahmatullah alayh, you will find that he speaks about an event that happened in 262 AH. 262 AH, which is about the second year of Ghaibat al-Sughra. And the name of the Rawi is Ahmad ibn Ibrahim. Ahmad ibn Ibrahim, let me set the scene for you. Imam is born, Imam al-Hujjah, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif, is born in 255 AH. 260 AH, Imam Hassan al-Askari becomes Shaheed. Imam has gone into Ghaibah. So the early days of Ghaibah, it has been only 2 years. Ahmad ibn Ibrahim, the entire Shia Ummah is in absolute chaos. Even though the first Na'ib has been appointed, because of the intensity of the fitna that happened in the Ghaibah, or as soon as the Imam went into Ghaibah, there was mass confusion within the entire Shia Ummah. Nobody knew, is the Imam alive? Ahsantum. Is the Imam alive? Is he born? Is he not born? Is Ja'far, the brother of Imam Hassan al-Asghari, the Imam? Is he not the Imam? Number of people are saying the Imam was not even born. Then there are all these news reports that are coming out that Bani Abbas were trying to find the Mahdi and the Mahdi can't be found, which means that he was not even born. Chaos. Chaos it was at that time. In all this chaos, people don't want to listen to the words of the first Na'ib. Similar things. Sometimes you find the Mujtahid, Saratan, Marja Taqlid. He is qualified Marja Taqlid, who is a Marja Taqlid as per the shurut of Imam al-Hujjah. They will fight the Marja Taqlid until Yawmul Qiyamah. Mazlum, I'm same thing. First Na'ib was like. History repeats itself. Jayyid. All this chaos, Ahmad ibn Ibrahim comes to Samarra. He says, I got to find out the truth. I need to find out what is happening over here. Shaykh al-Saduq, this is in Itmam al-Ni'mah, or Ikmaluddin Itmam al-Ni'mah. He comes in, he travels to Samarra and comes to the house of Imam Hassan al-Askari. Hadith al-Sharif, I'll paraphrase for you pretty quickly because we are also short on time. He comes into the house, and from behind the parda, he speaks to Sayyidah Hakima. Sayyidah Hakima is who? Sayyidah Hakima is the daughter of Imam Jawad alayhi salam. Yani the sister of Imam al-Hadi, the sister of Imam al-Hadi, and the aunt of Imam al-Askari. Insha'Allah, when you go to Samarra and you are blessed with the ziyarah of Imamain, Al-Hassan al-Askari and Imam al-Hadi, when you go to perform the ziyarah, you will see inside of the darih, there is the grave of the two Imams, Al-Hadi al-Askari, and then you have the grave of Sayyidah Narjis, the mother of the 12th Imam, and you also have the grave of Sayyidah Hakima, who is the aunt of the 12th Imam and the daughter of Imam al-Jawad. And if you actually dive a little bit deeper into history, you will find that even within that same Dhari area, even though a grave is not marked, you have over there even the mother of Imam Hassan al-Askari by the name of Sayyidah Sawsan. Her dhikr will come just now. Tayyib. So Ahmad ibn Ibrahim, I believe that's his name. Yes, Ahmad ibn Ibrahim. He comes into Samarra, from behind the parda speaks to Sayyidah Hakima. And he asks, Ahmad ibn Ibrahim was from the Shi'as of Imam al-Askari and the Shi'as of Imam al-Hadi, which means that he was somebody that was well grounded within the deen. But the intensity of the fitna was such that even Ahmad ibn Ibrahim had to make the journey and the hijrah to come to Samarra and to find out what is the true story in regards to the Imam al-Mahdi. And this was not an easy task, because Samarra was the capital of the Abbasids. If you were found to come into Samarra and you were digging deep and you were investigating about a fugitive who is sought by the state, brother, you are going to be in trouble. Sayyidah Narjis was imprisoned for this year. I don't know if you know, Shabab, Sayyidah Narjis was imprisoned for more than 2 years on account that she would not reveal any information in pertinence to Imam al-Hujjah. Sayyidah Narjis has given a sacrifice that is azim when it came to ensuring that Bani Abbas are clueless in regards to the whereabouts of Imam al-Mahdi. So you can imagine Ahmad ibn Ibrahim has not come on a simple task. He's come at a task that will probably cost him his life. He comes, he asks Sayyidah Hakima, what is the issue of Imamat? I'm paraphrasing the story. Sayyidah Hakima mentions for him that our deen is XYZ and these are the Imams. She names all the Imams from Rasulullah until she named Imam Maulana Sahib al-Amri wa Zaman. She named all the Imams including Imam al-Mahdi. Ahmad ibn Ibrahim asks Sayyidah Hakima, this Imam al-Mahdi, who is the 12th Imam that you have mentioned, Amin al-Mu'ayana aw khabaran, this 12th Imam that you are talking to about us, because everybody is on the same page until Imam al-Askari. Now it's about the 12th Imam. So Ahmad ibn Ibrahim is asking Sayyidah Hakima, this Mahdi that you're talking about, have you seen him? Lo, it is something that was narrated to you by the previous Imam. Now bear in mind, Sayyidah Hakima has seen Imam al-Hujjah. In fact, she was there on the 15th of Shaban when the nur of Imam al-Hujjah descended from the heavens onto earth. And there is a hikmah why she didn't say, I have seen the Imam. She said to him, khabaran min Abi Muhammad. There is a khabar and there is a hadith, nas from Imam Hasan al-Askari, that if you take him to be the Imam, this Imam al-Askari has said that the next Imam after me is the Mahdi. This is the place of content. So Ahmad ibn Ibrahim asks her, wa ayna huwa? And where is he? She replies back, masturan. Masturan, yani he's hidden, he's in ghaiba. Tayyib. Ahmad ibn Ibrahim asks, فَإِلَى مَنْ تَفْزَعَ الشِّيعَةِ? Well, if the Imam is hidden and the Imam has gone into ghaiba, who are the Shi'as supposed to go to? In the issues of halal, in the issues of haram, in the issues of understanding their aqidah. If the Imam is in ghaiba, who do we go back to? Sayyidah Hakima from behind the hijab says, إلى جدته Abi Muhammad. Sayyidah Hakima says to Ali ibn Ibrahim, at this point, beginning of the ghaibah, 2 years have gone into ghaibah, this is 262 AH. He's asking, who do we need to go to? Yani, who's the wakil, who's the representative, who speaks on behalf of Imam al-Hujjah? Sayyidah Hakima says, go back to the grandmother of Imam al-Hujjah. The grandmother of Imam al-Hujjah, who? The mother of Imam Hasan al-Askari, yani the wife of Imam al-Hadi, by the name of Sayyida Sawsan. Sayyida Sawsan, the grandmother of Imam al-Hujjah, was the single face of Shi'ism in the early days of the ghaibah of Imam al-Hujjah, such that anyone who required ilm or was seeking for an answer in regards to their deen of what is halal and what is haram would go to the wife of Imam al-Hadi, Sayyidah Sawsan. Number one, this shows you the status of Sayyidah Sawsan, the mother of Imam Hasan al-Askari, who is also buried within the Dhari area in Samarra. Tayyib. Ibn Ibrahim, he asks, he's puzzled. He says to Sayyidah Hakima, and you want us to follow an imam, a hidden imam, and the representative of this imam is a woman? How can it be? It didn't make sense to Abdullah ibn Ibrahim. You have to contextualize everything in history, ahibba'i. This is the time of the most greatest intense fitna that the Shia Ummah has ever seen. Ja'far is claiming Imamat. Bani Abbas is looking for Imam al-Hujjah. Over here nobody knows whether the Imam has been born or not been born. And if he has seen, people are accepting the testimony of those who saw him or no. First Naib also Mazlum. Number of people are rejecting and are skeptical to accept his authority in this chaos. Look at the intensity of the fitna. Imtihan this is. In that intensity of the imtihan, Sayyidah Hakima now is adding to the imtihan and saying to those people who are the most knowledgeable scholars and students of Imam al-Hadi and Imam al-Askari at that time, go back and take your ahkam diniya from a woman. He had problem digesting this. He asked her, how can it be? Look at the answer of Sayyidah Hakima. Iqtida'an. This Sayyida Sawsan, who is the Na'ib Khasa of Imam al-Hujjah. Don't be surprised that a woman is the Na'ib Khasa of the Imam, because Sayyidah Hakima says Iqtida'an li Hussein ibn Ali, in the same way that when Imam al-Hussein was becoming Shaheed, he gave a wasiyah and he commanded that his sister Sayyida Zainab would be the Na'iba Khasa of Imam Zainul Abidin, in that she was responsible for guiding the people and being the face of Shiaism, representing Imam as-Sajjad, and by her being the face of Shiaism, the attention of Bani Umayyah would be diverted away from Imam Zainul Abidin. So the ilm may emanate from Sajjad alayhi salam, but the fatwa came from Sayyida Zainab alayhi salam. So now, if we understand this point in history from Sayyidah Hakima, we come back to our topic of Sayyidah Zainab and we understand that Sayyidah Zainab's role when she came back to Medina is that she was the Na'iba Khasa of Imam al-Hussein, who was the face of delivering halal and haram and the teachings of the Quran and Usuluddin in its entirety, in order to divert the attention from Imam as-Sajjad. She became the face of Shiaism. And you cannot be a Na'ib Khas of a Ma'soom Imam if you are not infallible. You cannot be the face of Shiaism if you are not infallible. If we understand this, now we connect this point for you to get ma'rifah of Sayyidah Zainab, the grandness of this task of being a Na'iba Khasa of Imam as-Sajjad. We tie this back to the Majlis on the Shahadat of Imam Zainul Abidin. If you remember, in the Shahadat of Imam as-Sajjad, we narrated a testament from Imam as-Sajjad where he said, in this entire Hijaz, there was not even 20 people who loved us Ahlul Bayt. Can you imagine Sayyida Zainab became the Na'iba of the Imam and the face of Shiaism, and her role and her responsibility was pretty much to resuscitate Tashayyu in an environment where she was surrounded with haters of Ahlul Bayt in its literal sense. 20 people there weren't in Hijaz that loved Ahlul Bayt, yet Sayyida Zainab with all her courage stood in Medina amongst the enemies and spread the message of Imam al-Hussein, number one, and the teachings of the deen, to now set the foundation for Imam as-Sajjad later on to come and exercise openly the duties of Imamat. You see the critical role that is played by Sayyida Zainab as a support structure for a Ma'soom Imam, and number two, resuscitating Shiaism in its entirety. In fact, Sayyida Zainab was so staunch in the promotion of Azadari inside of Medina. You have within the history that the Majalis Azar that would happen within the houses of the women of Bani Hashim was so intense, the entire city of Medina would come to a standstill. At the end, the Wali and the governor of Medina in 62 AH, yani a complete year after Karbala, writes a letter to Yazid. The Wali of Medina writes a letter to Yazid. And this is found in the book Akhbar al-Zainabiyat. He writes a letter to Yazid and he says to him, إن كان لك شأنا في المدينة فعليك أن تخرج زينب بنت علي منها. If you have any interest in the city of Medina, meaning what? If you still want Medina to be part of your empire, Yazid, then get Sayyida Zainab bint Ali out of Medina. For indeed she is turning the masses against you, and she has started and she's upholding a slogan, Ya Litharat al-Hussein. Do you know this slogan, Ya Litharat al-Hussein? This is a slogan that is chanted in revolution, which means that Sayyida Zainab, when she entered into Medina, from or through the institution of Azadari, Sayyida Zainab was actively calling out for revolution against Bani Umayyah. This chant of revolution, Ya Litharat al-Hussein, that was chanted by Sayyida Zainab, is the same chant and the same slogan that is going to be of Imam al-Hujjah upon the Dhuhur, Ya Litharat al-Hussein. For a revolution that was started by Sayyida Zainab is going to be manifested by Imam al-Hujjah. This opens an entire new door in Ma'arif, the relationship between Imam al-Hujjah and Sayyida Zainab. Allahu Akbar. And it is for this reason that Yazid wrote back a letter to the Wali of Medina saying that Sayyida Zainab, he doesn't say Sayyida, but Zainab bint Ali must be exiled back into Sham. She should be forcefully removed from Medina. And if she refuses to be forcefully removed, فَحْدِمُوا بَيْتَ بَنِي Hashim. Text from the historical lines is that demolish the houses of Bani Hashim. Demolish their houses on them if Sayyida Zainab does not come out of Medina. And it is under these circumstances that Sayyida Zainab, in the presence of her husband, Sayyid Abdullah ibn Ja'far, alayhi salam, Sayyid Abdullah ibn Ja'far, who was tasked by Imam al-Hussein to run an entire infrastructure that would secure the foundation for Bani Hashim when they come back from Karbala to propagate the message. This Abdullah ibn Ja'far, who was tasked by Imam al-Hussein to set the foundation for Imam Sajjad to spread his imamat. Some people, unfortunately, due to their ignorance, they come and they put hukum on Abdullah ibn Ja'far that yes, he let down Imam al-Hussein and he didn't support the revolution of Imam al-Hussein. Jahal ma'al asaf shadid. Abdullah ibn Ja'far played a key role in establishing a network and a foundation for the imamat of Imam Sajjad. Him and Muhammad ibn Hanafiya. Ala kullin is a different story. Exile. Sayyida Zainab is exiled from Medina into Sham until they settled in the present day area where her dhari is, where she was ultimately buried. Allama Sayyid Muhammad Kadhim al-Kazwini states, and together with a number of Maraja, Mujaddid al-Shirazi rahmatullah alayhi as well, is of the opinion that Sayyida Zainab, in fact they are able to establish that Sayyida Zainab was poisoned by Bani Umayyah. She didn't die a natural death. She's a Shahida. Her presence inside of Syria in itself, painful as it was for Sayyida Zainab to return back to the land of Sham, but her presence over there was a threat for Bani Umayyah. They didn't know how to deal with the eloquence of Sayyida Zainab. And Sayyida Zainab returned back to Sham. She returned with Abdullah ibn Ja'far. She returned with Sayyida Fidda. And she returned with one of her sisters by the name of Sayyida Sukaina bint Ali, who is also buried in Daraya. And this is why the grave of Sayyida Fidda is in the graveyard, Babu Saghir. She came back with Sayyidah Zainab. And this is why Sayyidah Sukaina, the daughter of Amir al-Mu'mineen, is buried in Daraya, because she accompanied Sayyidah Zainab. And that entire vicinity, Shiaism, from the early days of Bani Umayyah, as in from 65, 66 AH, Shiaism in that area is attributed directly to the influence of Sayyidah Zainab al-Kubra and Sayyidah Sukaina bint Amir al-Mu'mineen. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ajjal farajam. I know I have gone way over my time for tonight, and I apologize. Tomorrow's majlis will be very, very mukhtasar, insha'Allah, and we go into the masa'ib. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The masa'ib of Sham, the masa'ib of Sham, Allahu Akbar. Sayyidah Zainab asks Imam Zainul Abidin, will I go back to Sham again? Ya Sajjad, this land of imprisonment, this land of torture, this land of humiliation. Allahu Akbar. This is why the narrations mention from all the tragedies that hurt Imam Zainul Abidin the most. Do you know Imam al-Hujjah was seen to be crying? One of the ulama said to him, why the tragedy? Which tragedy hurts you, ya Sahib al-Zaman? Was it the manner in which Ali al-Akbar was cut to pieces? Imam al-Hujjah says no. They say, was it the manner in which Ali al-Asghar was made shaheed? Imam al-Hujjah says no. They say, is it for the manner in which Shimr sat on the chest of Imam al-Hussein? Allah. Imam al-Hujjah is weeping. Imam al-Hujjah says no. The alim asks Imam al-Zamana, he says, which tragedy? 3 times. Imam al-Hujjah says, Asham, 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 Allahu Akbar. The women of Ali Muhammad who were paraded in the market of Sham. The narrations mention that. Do you know what the Maktal says? The Maktal says the women of Ali Muhammad were paraded with ropes around their necks. It says the ropes were around the necks of the elders in the same way that they were around the necks of the youngsters. Which means that if an adult stood up straight, they would choke the child that is behind them. Which is why the women, when they entered into Sham, they had to enter with their backs and their necks lowered. Allahu Akbar. The narration mentions that the heads of Imam al-Hussein and the companions were placed on the spears. They are being paraded inside of the bazaar. The women are hiding amongst themselves, hiding behind the spears. And as they are being paraded, the people in Sham, some of them are beating drums, some of them are laughing, some of them are cheering, some of them are throwing dates inside over there, some of them are standing on the roof and they are saying, bravo to Yazid, long live Yazid, Allahu Akbar. I found inside of the Maktal today, there was a part of the bazaar that the people were insulting Amir al-Mu'mineen, and they were hurling insults on Sayyidah Zainab, Allah, until the spears passed through a certain part of the market. There was a woman, she was sitting on top of the roof. When she saw the heads on the spear, she called out to Shimr. She says to Shimr bin Dhil Jawshan, this head is on which spear? Whose head is on the spear? Shimr says to the woman, this is the head of Hussein ibn Ali. Allah. The woman says, which Hussein? Which Ali? He says, the son Hussein, the son of Ali ibn Abi Talib. This woman who was a Nasibi, she says to Shimr, do you know Shimr, my husband and my sons were killed by Ali ibn Abi Talib in Siffin, and I would like to take revenge from this head that is on the spear. So Shimr stopped the procession inside of the market, and he gathered the people and he said, oh people of Sham, whoever wants to take revenge from Ali ibn Abi Talib for what happened in Siffin, this is the head of Imam al-Hussein. Take your revenge from him. The Maktal mentions this woman pick up the stone. Allah, Allah. I don't know what went through the heart of Sayyidah Zainab, but the Maktal mentions this woman picked up a stone. With all her strength, she threw the stone on the forehead of Imam al-Hussein. The manner in which the stone hit the head of Sayyidah Shuhada. 2 things happened over here. Maktal says blood began pouring down from the forehead of Imam al-Hussein. The manner in which she threw the stone, the head of Sayyidah Shuhada fell down from the spear. The Maktal says when Zainab saw the head of Imam al-Hussein on the ground, Zainab almost died out of grief. ماتم يا حسين، ماتم يا زينب.
सामने दरबार के गैरते सज्जाद का है ये कैसा इंतहा, सामने दरबार के गैरते सज्जाद का है ये कैसा इंतहा। 3 दिन गुजरे खड़ी है फातिमा की बेटियां, सामने दरबार के गैरते सज्जाद है ये कैसा इंतहा। शाम वाले हंस रहे हैं बेकसों को देख कर, है चरागा चासूर सज रहे हैं बामुदे। बाब साथ पर रुक रहा है बेकसों का कारवां, सामने दरबार के गैरते सज्जाद का है ये कैसा। सर अली अकबर के नेज़े पर उठाता है शकी, सुन चुकी 17 अज़ान बेरदा बिनते अली। रो रही है अज़ान सुन कर अली अकबर की माँ, सामने दरबार की मिसल ज़ारा सर झुकाए शामियों में आ गई। 4 बरसों में सकीना फिर ज़ईफ़ी छा गई। खान भी ज़ख्मी है गालों पर तमाचों के निशान, सामने दरबार के गैरते सज्जाद का है ये कैसा। खून के आंसू तपत के है सरे शबीर से, पूछती है जब सकीना ज़ैनबे दिलगीर से, ऐ फूफी अम्मा यहाँ से कब चलेगा कारवां, हमने दरबार के गैरते सज्जाद खून रोता है जो आबिद इसको ये उसको ये एहसास है। फातिमा ज़हरा की चादर शामियों के पास है, देख के कर कहती है ज़ैनब मेरे गाजी हो कहाँ, सामने दरबार के गैरते सज्जाद का है ये कैसा इंतहा। या हुसैन
आ रही है ये सदा ज़ैनबे दिलगीर की, 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 आ रही है ये सदा ज़ैनबे दिलगीर की। लाश बे गोरो कफन है, लाश बे गोरो कफन है, दश्त में हमशीर की, आ रही है ये सदा ज़ैनबे दिलगीर की, आ रही आ रही है ये सदा। अब नहीं अब्बास गाजी कासिम अकबर कहाँ, अब नहीं अब्बास गाजी कासिम अकबर कहाँ, हाय अब कोई उठाए लाश बे तस्वीर की, आ रही है ये सदा ज़ैनबे दिलगीर की, की आ कर दिया कुरान ज़ख्मी हुरमला के तीर ने, कर दिया कुरान ज़ख्मी हुरमला के तीर ने, जानते ना थे मुसलमान अज़मते बेशीर की, आ रही है ये सदा ज़ैनबे दिलगीर की, आ रही आ गई उम्मत नबी की आग लेकर हाथ में, आ गई उम्मत नबी की आग लेकर हाथ में, लाज रख लेना खुदाया चादरे ततहीर की, आ रही है ये सदा ज़ैनबे दिलगीर की, आ रही है ये सर्दिया गुलजार जब इस्लाम पर शबीर ने, सर्दिया गुलजार जब इस्लाम पर शबीर ने, खून के कतरों ने फिर खाके शिफा तामीर की, आ रही है ये सदा ज़ैनबे दिलगीर की, हुसैन 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 हुसैन, कहाँ से लाऊं भरा घर, कहाँ से लाऊं भरा घर, हुसैन हाय हुसैन, पुकारी ज़ैनब मुज़तर, हुसैन हाय हुसैन, हुसैन हाय हुसैन, हुसैन हाय हुसैन,
हुसैन हाय हुसैन, हुसैन हाय हुसैन। तुम्हारे बाद तो अब जब भी शाम आती है, तुम्हारे बाद तो अब जब भी शाम, तुम्हारे बाद तो अब जब भी शाम आती है, बाद तो अब जब भी शाम, सरों को दर से पटकने के काम आती है, सरों को दर से पटक बरसते रहते हैं आँखों से तासहर सबकी, लहू भरे हुए मंज़र हुसैन हाय हुसैन पुकारी है, हुसैन हाय हुसैन, हुसैन पलट के ओनो मोहम्मद भी घर नहीं आते, पलट के ओनो मोहम्मद भी घर नहीं आते, पलट के ओनो मोहम्मद भी घर नहीं आते, पलट के अब उम्मे लैला को अकबर नजर नहीं आते, अब उम्मे लैला को तड़पती रहती है कासिम की याद में फरवा, रबाब कहती है असग़र हुसैन हाय हुसैन पुकारी नबे मुज़तर हुसैन हाय हुसैन, हुसैन गुज़र गए हैं कई दिन न सब्र है न करार, गुज़र गए हैं दिन न सब्र है न करार, तुम्हें बुलाती है रातों को नींद में कई बार, तुम्हें बुलाती है कभी कभी यहाँ हम सब से छुप के कोने में, सकीना रोती है अक्सर हुसैन हाय हुसैन पुकारी है, हुसैन हाय हुसैन, हुसैन कटे जो पानी की खातिर करीब नहर फुरात, खातिर करीब कटे जो पानी की खातिर करीब नहर फुरात, खातिर करीब वही तो थे मेरे बाजू, वही तो थे मेरे हाथ, वही तो थे मेरे मिला हुआ है दिलो जां में ज़ख्म की सूरत है, जिसका नाम अलम पर हुसैन हाय हुसैन पुकारी ज़ैनब, हुसैन हाय हुसैन, हुसैन बदन था जिसमें अली का लहू रसूल का था, बदन था जिसमें अली का लहू रसूल का, जिगर हसन का था सीने में दिल बतूल का था, जिगर हसन का था सीने में दिल, वो जिसम छोड़ के आई हूँ तपते सहरा में, वो सर है नो के सिना पर हुसैन हाय हुसैन, पुकारी ज़ैनब मुज़्तर हुसैन हाय हुसैन, हुसैन हाय या हुसैन 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 या हुसैन। अल्लाहुम्मा
अस्सलामु अलैका या इब्न रसूलल्लाह, अस्सलामु अलैका या इब्न अमीरुल मुमिनीन व इब्न सय्यदुल वसीन, अस्सलामु अलैका या इब्न फातिमतुज़ ज़हरा सय्यदती निसाइल आलमीन, अस्सलामु अलैका व अला उख्तिका ज़ैनब, अस्सलामु अलैका व अला अखीका बिल फ़ज़्ल अब्बास व क़ासिम इब्नुल हसन व मुस्लिम इब्नु अक़ील व हानी इब्न उर्वा व हबीब इब्न मज़ाहिर वल हुर्र शहीद अर्रियाही, अस्सलामु अलैकुम या सादाती व मवाली जमीअन व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहु। अस्सलामु अलैका या मौलाना या गरीब अल गुरबा, अस्सलामु अलैका या मुगीस शिअत व ज़व्वार फ़ी यौमिल जज़ा, अस्सलामु अलैका या सुल्तान अल अरबी वल अजम या अली इब्न मूसा रिज़ा अलैहिस्सलाम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहु। अस्सलामु अलैका या मौलाना या साहिब अल अस्र व ज़मान, अस्सलामु अलैका या खलीफतुर रहमान, अस्सलामु अलैका या इमाम अल इंसी वल जान, अल अमान अल अमान अल अमान, सय्यदी अज्जलल्लाहु तआला फरजक व सहलल्लाहु मखरजक व ज़ुहूरक व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहु।
We have 2 more days of lecture of Sheikh Abbas Panju. We request all Mu'mineen to please spread a word to the youth so that we can have maximum attendance. Bar Muhammad wa ala Muhammad salawat.